The autumn wind swept through the streets of Chicago's South Side as Maya Richardson adjusted her backpack, her fingers still tingling from hours of typing code at her after-school computer science program. The street lights had just started to flicker on, casting long shadows across the cracked sidewalk. At 18, Maya stood out among her peers, not just for her height, but for the determined look in her dark brown eyes that spoke of someone who knew exactly where she was headed in life. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "Don't forget to pick up milk on your way home." Maya smiled, knowing her mom would still be at the hospital working a double shift as a nurse. It had been just the two of them since Maya's father passed away 5 years ago, and they had developed a rhythm that worked for them. As she approached the corner store, two unmarked police cars suddenly screeched to a halt beside her. Maya's heart jumped as four officers emerged, their hands already on their weapons. "Maya Richardson," one officer called out, a tall man with graying temples. "Put your hands where we can see them." Maya's mind raced as she slowly raised her hands. "There must be some mistake," she said, her voice steady despite the fear building in her chest. Several passers-by stopped to watch, some already pulling out their phones to record. "You're under arrest for cyber terrorism and unauthorized access to government databases," the officer announced, moving behind her with handcuffs. Maya's backpack hit the ground, spilling her advanced coding textbooks across the sidewalk. "What? That's impossible. I was in class all day. You can check with my teachers." The cold metal of the handcuffs bit into her wrists as the officer recited her rights. Maya could feel her classmates' eyes on her as they walked past, some whispering, others openly staring. Her perfect attendance record, her scholarship applications, her internship interviews. Everything she had worked for flashed before her eyes. At the police station, Maya sat in an interrogation room, her school uniform wrinkled from the rough ride in the police car. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as two FBI agents entered the room. One carried a thick file with her name on it. "Miss Richardson," the female agent began, placing photographs in front of her. "We have evidence of you accessing classified government systems at 2:47 p.m. today. Care to explain?" Maya leaned forward, her hands trembling slightly as she looked at the screenshots. "That's impossible. I was in Mr. Peterson's advanced Python class at that time. There are 30 other students who can verify that." The male agent opened his laptop, turning it to show her lines of code. "This signature matches code found on your personal devices. The IP address traces back to your home computer." "I didn't write that code," Maya insisted, her mind racing to understand how this could be happening. "Someone must have planted it. I would never." The door opened, and a tired-looking public defender walked in. "I'm James Cooper, and I'll be representing you. Don't say another word." Maya's mother burst into the room moments later, still wearing her hospital scrubs. "Baby, what's going on? They called me at work saying you're under arrest." "Mom, I didn't do anything wrong." Maya's composure finally broke as tears welled up in her eyes. "Someone's framing me." The public defender reviewed the preliminary evidence with growing concern. The case against Maya looked strong, too strong, almost as if it had been perfectly constructed. But Maya's eyes held steady as she maintained her innocence, and something about the whole situation felt off to him. As Maya was led to a holding cell, she caught a glimpse of herself in a window reflection. The girl looking back at her seemed different from the one who had left school just hours ago, the one with dreams of MIT and Silicon Valley. Now she was just another statistic, another black teenager in custody, despite everything she had done to defy stereotypes. In her cell, Maya closed her eyes and took deep breaths, just like her mother had taught her during tough times. She knew there was more to this situation than what appeared on the surface. Someone had gone to great lengths to frame her, and they had done an expert job of it. But they had made one crucial mistake: they had underestimated her. As night fell over Chicago, Maya Richardson sat alone in her cell, her brilliant mind already working to unravel the mystery of who had set her up and why. What she didn't know was that this arrest was just the beginning of a story that would shake the foundations of the intelligence community and change her life forever. 3 days into her detention at the juvenile facility, Maya sat across from her public defender, James Cooper, watching as he spread out papers across the metal table. The fluorescent lights flickered above them, casting harsh shadows across his worried face. "They found more evidence," Cooper said, pushing his glasses up his nose. Someone accessed classified FBI databases from your laptop last month. T. Maya leaned forward, her orange jumpsuit crinkling. That's impossible. I always lock my laptop, and the encryption I use is military grade. Nobody could have accessed it remotely without leaving traces. Cooper sighed, shuffling through more papers. The prosecution has chat logs, Maya. Conversations with known hackers. They found a hidden partition on your hard drive with sophisticated hacking tools. Those weren't there yesterday. Maya's voice echoed off the concrete walls. Someone's adding evidence. They have to be. Can we check the timestamps of when these files were created? The timestamps show they've been there for months. The FBI's forensic team is one of the best in the country. They're saying the evidence is irrefutable. Outside the window, Maya could see her mother talking to the facility staff, still wearing her hospital scrubs. She hadn't slept properly since Maya's arrest, picking up extra shifts to pay for a better lawyer they couldn't afford. Later that evening, in her cell, Maya lay on her thin mattress, staring at the ceiling. Her cellmate, a girl named Tasha, watched her from the opposite bunk. "You ain't like the rest of us in here," Tasha observed. "Something ain't right about your case." Maya turned to face her. "What do you mean?" "Most of us, they take their time building cases against us. Yours, it's like someone gift-wrapped it for the prosecutors. Too perfect, you know what I mean?" Maya sat up, her mind racing. Tasha was right. The evidence wasn't just planted, it was expertly crafted. This wasn't some random hacker trying to frame her. This was professional work. The next morning, during her allowed computer time in the facility's monitored lab, Maya noticed something strange. While typing her mother an email, she saw a brief flicker on the screen, almost like a signature. Her fingers froze over the keyboard as recognition hit her. She had seen that pattern before. But where? Her thoughts were interrupted as two FBI agents entered the computer lab. They weren't the same ones from her arrest. These men wore darker suits and carried themselves differently. More rigid, more military. "Miss Richardson," one of them said, placing a new stack of evidence in front of her. "We found these communications on a server in Eastern Europe. Care to explain why you were in contact with known cyber terrorists?" Maya looked at the papers, her tech-savvy mind spotting inconsistencies immediately. The IP addresses didn't match the standard format used in that region. The timestamps were off by several hours, not accounting for the time zone differences correctly. Amateur mistakes that no real hacker would make, but mistakes most investigators wouldn't notice. "These are fake," she said quietly, more to herself than to them. The agents exchanged glances. "That's a serious accusation, Miss Richardson. Are you suggesting the FBI is planting evidence?" Maya caught something in their tone, not anger or surprise, but almost satisfaction, like they were waiting for her to make that claim. She remembered her mother's words. "Sometimes, baby, the smartest thing you can do is stay quiet and observe." "No," she replied carefully. "I'm just trying to understand." After the agents left, Maya's public defender returned with more bad news. The prosecution had denied their request for an independent forensic analysis of her devices. They were pushing for an expedited trial. Back in her cell that night, Maya pulled out the worn notebook her mother had brought her. She began writing everything down. Every detail, every inconsistency, every strange interaction. As she wrote, a pattern began to emerge. The evidence wasn't just appearing, it was being strategically released. Each new piece made her look more guilty while simultaneously making it harder to prove her innocence. Someone with intimate knowledge of the justice system was orchestrating this. But why her? What made Maya Richardson, a high school senior from the South Side, important enough to frame this elaborately? As she stared at her notes, a memory tickled the edge of her consciousness, the screen flicker she had seen earlier. She had seen it 6 months ago during a national coding competition, right before a woman in a dark suit had approached her about an extraordinary opportunity. Maya's hand trembled as she wrote down one final note. "Who really recruited me that day?" The setup was perfect. Like all perfect things, it had to have a flaw. Maya just had to find it before it was too late. The juvenile detention library was quiet except for the sound of Maya's pencil scratching against paper. 2 weeks had passed since her arrest, and she had turned the small study cubicle into her own investigation center. Her notebook, now filled with observations and connections, lay open before her. The elderly librarian, Mrs. Johnson, walked past with a cart of books, purposely slowing near Maya's spot. "Found something interesting in those computer science journals?" she asked, her voice low. Maya looked up, dark circles under her eyes from nights spent thinking. "Yes, actually. Did you know there have been 6 other cases in the past year? All teenagers, all accused of hacking government databases. All charges mysteriously dropped before trial." Mrs. Johnson slipped Maya another technology magazine. "Page 43 might interest you," she whispered before moving on. Maya flipped to the page and her heart skipped. There was a small article about a government program recruiting young tech prodigies. The photo showed a familiar face, the woman who had approached her at the coding competition 6 months ago. During afternoon recreation time, Maya sat with Tasha in the courtyard, watching other girls play basketball. "Something bigger is happening," Maya said, pulling at the grass. "Those other cases? 5 of the teens disappeared after their charges were dropped. No social media presence, no public records, nothing." Tasha leaned closer. "One of the guards was talking about you this morning. Said some suits from Washington were asking questions." Maya's mind raced. Washington meant federal involvement, higher than the FBI agents who had been questioning her. That night, unable to sleep, Maya remembered something crucial. During the coding competition where she'd met the mysterious woman, they had made her sign papers. Her mother hadn't been present. They'd said it was just standard competition paperwork. The next morning, during her weekly visit, Maya asked her mother about those papers. "Mom, do you remember that coding competition? Did I ever bring home any documents afterward?" Her mother's tired face scrunched in thought. "Now that you mention it, you did. I found them when I was cleaning your room last week. They seemed important, so I put them in your father's old lockbox." Maya leaned forward urgently. "Mom, you need to find those papers. They might explain everything." 2 days later, Maya sat in the visitation room as her public defender, Mr. Cooper, reviewed the documents her mother had found. His face grew increasingly pale. "Maya," he said slowly, "this isn't a standard competition waiver. This looks like a government non-disclosure agreement, but parts of it are redacted. I've never seen anything like it." Before they could discuss it further, the same 2 FBI agents in dark suits entered the room, but this time, Maya was ready. She had noticed their shoes were different from standard FBI issue. They were tactical boots, the kind used by special operations. "We need to speak with Miss Richardson alone," one agent said. Mr. Cooper stood his ground. "I'm her legal representation. I stay." The agents exchanged looks. "Very well. Miss Richardson, we understand you've been investigating other cases similar to yours." Maya kept her face neutral, remembering the pattern she'd discovered. Each of those other teens had been accused, just like her. Each had tried to prove their innocence, and each had disappeared after getting too close to the truth. "I'm just trying to understand my own case," she replied carefully. The second agent placed a phone on the table. It showed a live feed of Maya's mother arriving at the hospital for her shift. The message was clear. They were watching. After they left, Mr. Cooper wiped sweat from his forehead. "Maya, what have you gotten involved in?" Maya stared at the papers in front of them, her mind working overtime. The redacted document, the mysterious woman, the other cases, the tactical boots, the surveillance, it all pointed to something bigger than a simple hacking accusation. That night, as Maya lay in her cell, she made a decision. She had been playing defense, trying to prove her innocence. But maybe that was the wrong approach. Maybe it was time to figure out why she had been chosen in the first place. She pulled out her notebook and started a new page. At the top, she wrote, "The recruitment program." Below it, she added, "What are they really looking for?" As Lights Out was called, Maya smiled for the first time in weeks. They thought they were testing her by framing her. But maybe, just maybe, this whole setup was the real test, and she was starting to pass it. Maya stood on the stage of the National Youth Coding Championship, her hands shaking slightly as she accepted first place. Her algorithm had solved a complex security problem in half the time of her closest competitor. The judges seemed amazed, but Maya knew she could have done it even faster. As she left the auditorium, a woman in a charcoal suit approached her. "Impressive work, Miss Richardson. especially the backdoor failsafe you built in. Most people wouldn't have caught that part of the challenge. Maya stopped walking. She hadn't told anyone about the failsafe. It wasn't even part of the competition requirements. She had added it just because it felt right. "I'm Sarah Chen," the woman said, offering a business card that had only a phone number. "We should talk about your future." The next day, they met at a quiet coffee shop. Agent Chen explained she worked for a special division of the CIA that recruited young talent. "The world is changing, Maya. Our enemies are getting younger, smarter, more tech-savvy. We need people like you." "Why me?" Maya asked, stirring her untouched hot chocolate. "Because you don't just solve problems. You see patterns others miss. Like right now, you've already noticed the two men by the window aren't really reading their newspapers, and the barista has changed shifts 3 times in an hour." Maya's eyes widened. She had noticed these things but hadn't realized their significance. Agent Chen leaned forward. "We'd like to recruit you for a special program. You train while finishing school, and no one could know, not even your mother. It's a lot to ask of an 18-year-old, but we believe you're ready." Over the next few months, Maya lived a double life. During school hours, she was a regular senior. But afterward, in what her mother thought was an advanced computer science program, she trained with the CIA. They taught her cryptography, counter-surveillance, and advanced coding techniques. Maya excelled at everything, especially the psychological training, understanding how hackers think, predicting their moves. "You're our best recruit," Agent Chen told her one day, watching Maya break through a supposedly unbreakable encryption. "But this program isn't just about finding talent. It's about finding people we can trust with real power." Maya remembered those words now, sitting in her cell as the pieces finally clicked together. The setup, the evidence, her arrest. It was all part of the training. They were testing not just her skills, but her character. She pulled out her notebook and wrote down a new observation. "They're watching how I handle being framed. Will I expose the program to save myself? Will I break under pressure? Or will I find another way out?" The next morning, during her exercise time, Maya noticed a new guard. The woman's stance was too perfect, her movements too precise. When she passed by, she slipped something into Maya's pocket. Later, in her cell, Maya found a small note. "Final test in progress. Remember your training. SC." Maya's heart raced. The whole case against her was an elaborate CIA training exercise. The evidence had been planted by her own instructors. The FBI agents were CIA operatives. Even some of the guards were part of it. But why go to such extremes? Then she remembered Agent Chen's words from their last training session. Sometimes, the best way to catch a hacker is to become their target. You have to think like them, move like them, understand their desperation. Maya looked at her reflection in the small mirror above her cell's sink. They weren't just teaching her to catch hackers. They were teaching her to think like someone who had been wrongly accused, to understand both sides of the justice system. She pulled out her notebook one last time, writing, "The recruitment never ended. This isn't a test of my coding skills. It's a test of my judgment, my loyalty, and my ability to handle pressure without compromising my principles." As Lights Out was called, Maya made her decision. She wouldn't expose the program, but she wouldn't play helpless either. She would find a way to prove her innocence that protected both her future and the CIA's secrets. Tomorrow, her real final exam would begin. Maya Richardson, the CIA's youngest recruit, would show them exactly why they had chosen her in the first place. The courtroom fell silent as Maya Richardson took her seat at the defendant's table. After 3 weeks in juvenile detention, she wore a simple navy blue dress her mother had brought for the trial. The weight of her CIA badge, hidden in a secret compartment of her shoe, felt heavy against her foot. Judge Harrison peered down from his bench, his expression stern. "The United States versus Maya Richardson. The charges are cyber terrorism, unauthorized access of government databases, and conspiracy against the United States." Maya watched as the prosecutor, a sharp-faced woman named Ms. Reynolds, approached the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence will show that this young woman, despite her age, orchestrated one of the most sophisticated cyber attacks on our government systems." From the gallery, Maya's mother clutched her nurse's badge, having come straight from her shift. Their eyes met briefly, and Maya saw the mixture of fear and faith in her mother's gaze. The prosecution's first witness was a FBI cyber forensics expert. He presented screen after screen of evidence. Maya's IP address, timestamps, code fragments that matched her typing style. It was perfect, too perfect, and Maya knew her CIA trainers had crafted every detail. During cross-examination, her public defender, Mr. Cooper, tried his best. Could this evidence have been planted? Impossible, the expert testified. The digital signatures are unique to Miss Richardson's devices. Maya noticed Agent Chen sitting in the back row, her face unreadable. Was this the moment to reveal everything? But Maya remembered her training. Sometimes winning meant playing the long game. The next witness was Maya's computer science teacher, Mr. Peterson. Maya is one of my brightest students, he said, looking uncomfortable. But I noticed changes in her behavior over the past few months. She asked unusual questions about government firewalls. Maya almost smiled. Mr. Peterson was also CIA, planted in her school months ago as part of her training. She wondered how many other people in the courtroom were part of this elaborate test. During the lunch break, Maya sat with Mr. Cooper in a conference room. They have too much evidence, he said, loosening his tie. Maybe we should consider a plea deal. No deals, Maya replied firmly. I need you to trust me. The afternoon brought more damaging testimony. A cybersecurity expert showed how Maya's code had breached multiple classified databases. A behavioral analyst suggested her perfect student record was a cover for her illegal activities. Maya took notes throughout, appearing to grow more desperate with each witness. But inside, she was counting agents. The court reporter's typing pattern was military-trained. The bailiff's shoes had the same tactical soles as the FBI agents who visited her. Even one of the jurors had the subtle earpiece scar that Maya had learned to recognize during her CIA training. Finally, Ms. Reynolds called her star witness, a former teenage hacker who claimed Maya had recruited him for the attacks. As he took the stand, Maya noticed something in his testimony, a pattern in his words that matched one of her CIA training exercises. No further questions, Ms. Reynolds said, looking satisfied. Mr. Cooper stood for cross-examination, but Maya touched his arm. Ask him about Project Mirror, she whispered. Objection. Ms. Reynolds shouted before the question was even asked. That information is classified. The judge's gavel cracked like thunder. Approached the bench, counselors. As the lawyers huddled with the judge, Maya caught Agent Chen's slight nod from the back of the courtroom. She had passed another test, identifying a fellow CIA trainee without exposing the program. The day ended with the prosecution resting its case. Tomorrow, Maya would have to decide, continue playing along with the test, or reveal her true role. Either choice would change her life forever. Back in her holding cell, Maya removed her shoe and touched her hidden CIA badge. The metal was cold against her fingers, but it reminded her of who she really was. She wasn't just fighting for her freedom. She was proving she could handle the pressure of a life in intelligence. As she lay on her bunk, Maya thought about all the other young recruits who must have faced similar tests. How many had broken under the pressure? How many had exposed the program to save themselves? Tomorrow would determine if Maya Richardson was truly ready for a life in the shadows. As she drifted off to sleep, she smiled, knowing that in the end, this wasn't just about proving her innocence. It was about proving her worth. Agent Sarah Chen sat in her dark office at CIA headquarters, staring at multiple screens showing live feeds from Maya's trial. A cup of cold coffee sat untouched on her desk as she watched her young recruit face the toughest test of her training. She's holding up well, said Director Thompson, entering the office without knocking. Better than the others. Chen nodded, thinking of the 5 previous recruits who had failed at this stage. Maya's different. She sees patterns within patterns. She's already identified 8 of our agents in that courtroom without exposing them. That's what worries the committee, Thompson replied, dropping a thick file on Chen's desk. She's too good. Some think she might be a security risk. Chen turned to face her superior. With all due respect, sir, that's exactly why we need her. The threats we're facing aren't coming from middle-aged men in foreign intelligence services anymore. They're coming from teenagers in bedrooms with laptops. On one screen, Maya was being led back to her holding cell. Chen watched her young recruit carefully maintain her scared teenager act, even while expertly scanning her surroundings. We need to end this test, Chen insisted. She's proven herself. Not yet, Thompson said firmly. The final phase starts tomorrow. We need to know she can handle extreme pressure without breaking cover. After Thompson left, Chen pulled out her secure phone and dialed a number she rarely used. This is Handler SC7. I need clearance to activate Protocol Phoenix. The voice on the other end was cold. Request denied. The simulation continues as planned. Chen slammed the phone down, remembering the day she first spotted Maya at the coding championship. The girl had solved problems in ways even the CIA's best hackers hadn't considered. But more importantly, she had shown incredible judgment, adding security measures to protect innocent users who might be affected by her solutions. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. A junior agent entered with more files. The prosecution's building up to something big for tomorrow. They're bringing in Maya's mother's hospital records. Chen's head snapped up. That wasn't part of the test parameters. Orders came from above, the agent said nervously. They want to see if she'll expose the program to protect her mother's job. Chen's jaw tightened. They were pushing too far. Maya was just 18, and her mother was all she had left. Even the best agents had breaking points. She pulled up Maya's initial recruitment file on her computer. The psychological evaluation showed an extraordinary level of emotional intelligence combined with unwavering loyalty to her principles. That's what had made her perfect for the youth recruitment program. But now those same qualities could destroy her. Chen spent the next hours going through every clearance protocol she knew, trying to find a way to end the test before it went too far. Each attempt was blocked by higher authorities. At midnight, she drove to the detention center where Maya was being held. The guard, another CIA operative, led her into the observation room. Through the cameras, Chen watched Maya sleeping peacefully in her cell. The girl had hidden a paperclip in her hairband earlier that day, an escape tool, but hadn't used it. She was playing the long game, just as she'd been trained. Chen's phone buzzed with a message from Director Thompson. Tomorrow's evidence goes forward as planned. No interference. Making her decision, Chen pulled out a second phone, one not issued by the CIA. She typed a short message to a contact she hadn't used in years. Need emergency clearance for Protocol Phoenix. Asset at risk. Calling in Marker 7. The response came seconds later. Granted. 900 hours. Chen smiled for the first time in days. Marker 7 was a favor owed to her by someone high in the intelligence community, someone even Thompson couldn't override. As she drove home in the early morning hours, Chen thought about what Maya had said during her recruitment. The best security isn't about keeping people out. It's about knowing when to let them in. Tomorrow, Chen would risk her own career to protect her recruit, because sometimes being a good handler meant knowing when to break protocol to do what's right. She just hoped Maya could hold on for a few more hours. The final act of this elaborate test was about to begin, but not in the way anyone expected. The courtroom buzzed with tension on the final day of Maya Richardson's trial. The prosecution had just finished presenting evidence suggesting her mother's hospital job might be connected to the alleged cyber attacks. Maya sat perfectly still, her face a mask of calm, though inside her heart was racing. They were threatening her mother's career, a line she hadn't expected them to cross. Her hidden CIA badge felt like it was burning against her ankle. Judge Harrison looked at his watch. "Ms. Reynolds, are you ready to make your closing arguments?" The prosecutor stood, straightening her jacket. "Yes, Your Honor." The courtroom doors burst open. Agent Sarah Chen strode in, flanked by two senior officials in dark suits. "Your Honor, I have an emergency intervention order from the Director of National Intelligence." Maya recognized the subtle hand signal Chen gave her, one they'd practiced months ago. "Showtime." "What is the meaning of this interruption?" Judge Harrison demanded. Chen approached the bench, presenting a folder with classified markings. "Your Honor, this trial is hereby suspended under National Security Directive 2741. Maya watched as the judge's eyes widened reading the documents. She noticed other changes in the courtroom, too. The fake FBI agents were now standing at attention. The planted juror had removed his earpiece, and her public defender, Mr. Cooper, suddenly looked less nervous and more alert. "Miss Richardson," Chen called out, her voice clear and commanding. "You are now authorized to present your credentials." With steady hands, Maya reached down to her ankle and removed her CIA badge from its hidden compartment. The courtroom fell silent as she stood and held it up. Maya Richardson is a Level 4 operative of the Central Intelligence Agency's Youth Talent Initiative, Chen announced. The charges against her are part of a classified training exercise that has now been terminated. Maya's mother gasped from the gallery. The prosecutor, who Maya now realized wasn't part of the CIA test, looked completely stunned. For the record, Maya spoke for the first time, her voice strong. I am officially declining to press charges against the agency for this training exercise, as is my right under Section 47 of my recruitment contract. Chen smiled slightly. Maya was still protecting the program even now. The judge, recovering from his shock, cleared his throat. This court will take a 30-minute recess while I review these documents. In the conference room, Maya finally hugged her mother, who was crying and confused. Baby, why didn't you tell me? She couldn't, Chen explained gently. The program requires absolute secrecy. Maya has been protecting national security interests while maintaining her cover as a high school student. She's one of our best. Maya's mother looked at her daughter with new eyes, seeing not just her little girl, but a young woman who had carried an enormous responsibility in silence. When court resumed, Judge Harrison looked both impressed and slightly annoyed. Based on the classified documents presented, all charges against Maya Richardson are dismissed. This court is adjourned. As people filed out, Maya noticed Director Thompson enter the courtroom. He approached her with a mix of frustration and respect. You managed to maintain your cover while identifying our agents, protect the program's secrets under extreme pressure, and still find a way to end the exercise without compromising operational security, he said. Impressive. Thank you, sir, Maya replied, though I suspect Agent Chen deserves some credit for the timing. Thompson nodded. Your handler went to extraordinary lengths to protect you. That kind of loyalty goes both ways in our organization. He handed her a new badge. Welcome to the CIA, officially this time. Later, as Maya and her mother drove home, they passed the school where everything had started. The coding competition that had led to her recruitment felt like a lifetime ago. I'm still processing all this, her mother said. My daughter, a CIA operative. Your father would have been so proud. Maya smiled, thinking of all the other young recruits out there, living double lives, protecting their country in ways most people would never know about. Her phone buzzed with a message from Chen. Training exercise complete. Real work starts Monday. Ready? Maya typed back quickly. Ready. Then she added, Thank you for having my back. The response came immediately. Always. That's what handlers are for. As they pulled into their driveway, Maya felt the weight of her new badge in her pocket. The trial was over, but her real journey was just beginning. 6 months after her dramatic courtroom revelation, Maya Richardson sat in a secure CIA facility, monitoring cyber threats alongside other young operatives. Her workstation displayed multiple screens showing potential security breaches, each one requiring her unique insight to evaluate. Another attempt from that group in Eastern Europe. She called out to Agent Chen, who was supervising the unit. Same signature as last week, but they've modified their approach. Chen nodded approvingly. Write up the analysis. The director wants your perspective on this one. Maya's reputation within the agency had grown quickly. Her experience of being framed and tested had given her a unique perspective on security vulnerabilities. She could think like both the protector and the accused, seeing angles others missed. During her lunch break, Maya video called her mother, who was now cleared to know some details of her work. How's the hospital, Mom? Busy as always, her mother replied. Though it's easier now that I don't have to work double shifts to pay for legal fees we never actually needed. She smiled, having finally found humor in the elaborate ruse that had tested her daughter. After work, Maya headed to her other commitment, a youth advocacy program she had started for teenagers wrongly accused of cybercrimes. While she couldn't reveal the CIA's recruitment program, she could help identify young tech talents and guide them toward positive paths. The system isn't perfect, she told her group of teens. But sometimes what looks like your worst moment can become your greatest opportunity. Director Thompson appeared in the doorway of the community center, watching her work. After the session, he approached her. Your program's getting attention in Washington, he said. 5 of your kids have already been recruited by various agencies. You're changing the face of intelligence work. Maya thought about how different the intelligence community looked now compared to a year ago. Her unit alone had recruited 3 more young black women, 2 Latino teenagers, and a girl in a wheelchair whose coding skills rivaled her own. We need people who understand both sides of the system, she replied. The hunters and the hunted. Later that evening, Maya met with Agent Chen for their weekly handler meeting at their usual secure location, a small coffee shop where they had first discussed her recruitment. The Youth Talent Initiative has been officially expanded, Chen informed her. Your trial set a new standard for testing recruits. Though, she smiled, we're being a bit less dramatic with the setups now. Maya stirred her hot chocolate, the same drink she'd ordered during their first meeting. Any of them figure it out as fast as I did? Not even close. You're still the record holder for fastest identification of undercover agents during the trial phase. They discussed Maya's latest project, developing a program to identify potential recruits through their online activities while simultaneously protecting them from actual cybercrimes. By the way, Chen added, your mother's background check came back clean. She's been approved for higher security clearance. You can tell her more now. Maya felt tears forming but held them back. Finally, she could share more of her life with her mom. On her way home, Maya passed the courthouse where her trial had taken place. The building looked different now, not as intimidating as it had seemed during those tense days. Her phone buzzed with a message from Tasha, her former cellmate who she'd helped get into a coding program. Guest who just got an interview with the NSA. Maya smiled. The system that had once been used to test her was now being transformed by her, becoming a pathway for other young people who might have been overlooked. At home, Maya opened her laptop and began working on her latest project, a security protocol that would help identify falsely accused teens before they got lost in the system. On her wall hung her first CIA badge, the one she'd revealed in court, next to a photo of her father in his police uniform. Look at us now, Dad, she whispered. Protecting people in ways you never imagined. As midnight approached, Maya's secure phone lit up with an alert. A new potential crisis was developing, and her team was being called in. As she grabbed her coat, she smiled, thinking about how far she'd come from that scared 18-year-old in handcuffs. She wasn't just the girl who'd shocked the court anymore. She was Agent Maya Richardson, and she was exactly where she was meant to be, changing the system from the inside out.